there are some cars that people obsess over. And they obsess over them so much they become blinded by their flaws. They'll tell you that it's just idiosyncrasies or it's character at best. Now, one of those cars that I've never quite got my head around people's obsession with is the original Land Rover Defender. And that's despite the fact that I used to sell Land Rover back in the mid-1990s. I certainly can't get my head around the prices that some of them command. But there's no doubt about it, there's quite a following for the car. And one person who really obsessed over it and really did have a big following for it was the billionaire industrialist Sir Jim Ratcliffe. In fact, such was his love for the car that when Land Rover said that they were going to stop building it, he approached them and said, "Can I buy the rights to it and all the tooling so he could carry on production?" They said no. So in a very British sort of way, he stuck two fingers up to the green oval and said, "Sod you, I'll build my own version then." And that's why we have this, the Ineos Grenadier. Welcome to this week's road test review. Welcome to the Ineos Grenadier. Please sit yourself down, make yourself comfortable in the house of cars. Now, I appreciate the Grenadier is not exactly a new car. And as I say, I've never been a massive lover of the old Defender, despite the fact that I used to sell them back in the mid-1990s, and despite the fact that I've got many friends who own them and do love them very, very dearly. So I was quite keen to get a Grenadier and just sort of try it and see if this actually was an improvement on the old Defender and see what all the fuss of this car was about, because it has created quite a lot of waves, especially in the automotive press. And it's taken me a little while to get my hands on one. But what I will say is this: the week that it's arrived with me couldn't have been better timing, because here in the UK, we've experienced in October some, shall we say, changeable type of weather. 1 minute it's like this, beautiful, clear and sunny, if a little bit cold. The next minute it's howling gales and torrential rain. And I've also been terrifically busy over the last 7 days that I've had this car. I've had press events up and down the UK. I've had friends visiting from overseas. So this car has been put through probably more of a road and, dare I suggest, off-road review than any other press car that I've had. So what do I think about it? Well, let's start the road test review and off-road test review and find out. But before we do, could I just ask a wee favour? Could you just make sure you press the subscribe button? And obviously, once you've watched the review, if you like it, give it a wee thumbs up. And of course, as always, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, especially if you own a Grenadier. Let me know what you think about it. Right, shall we make a start? But before we start the review, let's take a look at the main points of the Ineos Grenadier. So as I said, after being turned away by Land Rover to buy the rights to continue building the old Defender, Sir Jim Ratcliffe set out to build his own version of the legendary 4x4, but updated it with how he thought that it should be. There are 4 Grenadiers to choose from: the passenger station wagon, the 5-seat commercial, the Quartermaster crew cab pickup, and a Grenadier chassis cab. 2 engines are available, both turbocharged 6-cylinder power plants supplied by BMW, either a 3-litre petrol unit with 282 horsepower, or a 3-litre turbo diesel that we have here with 245 horsepower. Both come fitted with an 8-speed automatic transmission only. As you would expect, there is a huge range of accessories that can be bought for the Grenadier to suit whatever job you need it to do, such as roof lighting, a winch, leisure accessories and interior fitments. And prices start from £62,500 for the standard Grenadier Station Wagon before options. Now, like I said, I appreciate I'm a little bit late to the Grenadier party, but given my ambivalence towards the old Defender, how am I going to feel about one man's vision about what the Defender should really have turned into? Well, to find out, we're going to put it through a House of Cars road test review. And I think you might be quite surprised by my thoughts at the end of this. Right, as always, we're going to start with styling. And I'll use that term in the loosest possible sense, because there'll be certain people will look at it and squint their eyes and go, well, that's just a Defender wearing a different badge. And I'd understand why you'd think that. But the thing is, the more I spend time with it, the more I look at it, the more I disagree with that. Because when you're designing an off-roader, there is probably just a certain way that you should design it for absolute sort of like maximum sort of like ability. And if you think about it, there's a lot of Defender in it, yes, but there's also a lot of G-Wagon in it. And the G-Wagon shares a lot with the Defender in it. Do you know what I mean? So they're sort of all similar, I think, in some respects. You've got the flat-topped wings at the side, which is the immediate thing you think of. Well, that's just the Defender with a slightly raised centre bonnet. But the reason you've got flat-topped wings is so you can see them from the driver seat, you know. And then, of course, they're low down as well to help a little bit with visibility. But then you need a slightly higher bonnet, obviously, because to clear the power plant. So that's sort of why it's function over form. That's why it follows this. You get the Grenadier embossed in the side of the bonnet there. Now, of course, at the front here, you've got the big headlamps here, the LED headlamps, and they've got Grenadier just in them in there. And then you've got the sort of like the two sort of like driving lamps in the centre of the grille there. And it's a really open grille, that. But of course, it's got the honeycomb behind it to help, sort of like, you know, stuff like that. Now, you're going to think to yourself, Brian, you should have washed it before you filmed it. I was out yesterday with the car. As I say, I've been really busy this week and I've had the car up and down the country and I've been up motorways and aeroads and stuff. And then I got a phone call to say, would I like to come and go do some off-roading with Surrey 4x4 tours? A big shout out to them, by the way, Gareth and Rob down there, that took me out off-roading in this yesterday and shown me sort of like, you know, what it's capable of. And I have to say it was fabulous fun. That's why it looks the way it does, because, well, that's what I've been doing with it. And that's how it should look. Anyway, there we go. Big bumper at the front there. That's the big thing that's very different to the Defender and the G-Wagon. And that's because you can mount a winch on this. And you can do that from factory. You can option it with a factory fitted winch. I think it's the only car that's ever been available with that. And it will pull 5.5 tons, that winch. Phenomenal. And that's another thing as well. It'll depend on what you order with the car as to how the suspension is. Talk about that a wee bit later as well. There's some intakes there just at the side of the headlamps, as you can see. And then underneath, there's some more intake there. And then a big sort of like sump guard underneath there. But it doesn't go that far back. And you think, well, that's not that protective. But then you realise there's the massive big live axle behind that. So it's got this huge big beam axle across the front there. So it can't actually go underneath it. And then you've got these towing eyes there. And it was something incredible that the Ineos guys were telling me, that, you know, the ability to actually tow with this thing and its pulling power and things like that. It's like many tons can be pulled with these towing eyes. I think they said something like about 8 tons, that if you hooked everything up together, you know, the towing eyes plus the winch, you could actually pull something of about 8 tons in weight. That's phenomenal. It's a workhorse. That's the thing you've got to start getting your head around with the Grenadier, and I have. It's a workhorse first and foremost, a car second, and it's designed to be a workhorse. Now you see, inside profile, it reminds me more of a G-Wagon than a Defender. I don't know if it does you, but that's what I mean. I don't think it is just a rip-off of a Defender styling. I think it looks like all of the 4x4 sort of put together, but that's what I think. I think that, you know, if you're designing your ultimate 4x4, it will end up looking a certain way, like one of these, which is like a Defender, which is like a G-Wagon. That's what I think, anyway. Plastic wheel arch extensions, obviously, which is quite helpful. You get standard 17-inch wheels on the sort of lead-in car, or you move up to the 18-inch wheels on the Fieldmaster and the Trailmaster. There's different wheels available. This car's been fitted with the rough pack, okay? So the two models that you can have, well, there's a base model, Grenadier, and then you move into either a Fieldmaster or a Trailmaster, okay? Oddly enough, Fieldmaster is the one that's not geared for off-road. That's the Trailmaster, which gets the rough pack as standard. All cars get a centre locking diff, but if you go for the rough pack, you get a front and rear locking diff as well as these BF Goodrich off-road tyres, which are phenomenal. They're really good. So that's why this one looks slightly different. It's also got the side steps, which is handy for getting out because it is a tall car. My daughter was with me yesterday. She found those quite handy for clambering in and out of the car off. And then you get this utility belt down the side of it. See? Where you can hang accessories off. Such a clever thing. You can clip things like tables on there and desks and extra lights and stuff like that. It's just so clever. Of course, you get the big exposed hinges to keep it nice and simple. The other thing that's really interesting, I remember going to visit Twisted. You know, the people that do the sort of like the tune the Land Rover Defenders. And I was talking to them, and they were saying to me that the hours that they spend getting a Defender's doors to close properly, well, that does it as standard. That's like a G-Wagon, that's proper door shut. Fabulous. Then you get your roof guttering here, and then you get these, because again, you think to yourself, well, these are going to be where the sort of like, you know, the lights, the roof lights are, you know, in terms of, sorry, the windows are, the roof windows on a Defender, but they've got these bars, and these are pre-wired in here as well. So you can put auxiliary lamps in there and things like that, or for power takeoff. You know, if you're putting a roof tent in and you want power up into it because you've got a little fridge or something that you want to carry up there, and it's all pre-wired. How clever's that? I love it. Hey, you get nice little things like the big chunky door handles, little Ineos badge there, and as I say, you get more of these sort of utility belt things there, and your built-in handbag, because for all of Sir Jim Radcliffe's good intentions of saying he wants to build a proper British off-roader, the thing's built in France, because he bought the old Smart factory from Mercedes-Benz. Now, it made an awful lot of sense in that sense, because it was already there, Mercedes weren't using it anymore, and of course all the tooling was there and there was a workforce. But yeah, it's not exactly the British off-roader that he was maybe envisaging when he first set out to build it. But I tell you what, I love it. Now this one's a station wagon, okay, which means obviously you get, oh, so you've got privacy glass on it, but that's the rear window. You can buy it as a utility wagon, so you've got 5 seats, and then that's just a piece of metal, you know, that's body there. Or you can buy the Quartermaster, which is a crew cab pickup. And if you go for the Quartermaster, it's much longer than this. There was a couple of guys that were there yesterday, had the Quartermaster pickup. We were noticing that they're turning round tight bits, you know, in the tour that we were doing. You know, they were have to take a couple of swings at it because of the length of it. What I didn't tell you about was the chassis underneath. So it's a ladder frame chassis, a box section ladder frame chassis with the body on top. That's what you need for proper off-roading, and you can have that in different colours. Now it's standard black on here, but you can option it up in either halo red or rhino grey. Now it's a cost option, but part of that cost Ineos then donate to the charities, the Halo charity, which I think is a landmine charity, and obviously the Rhino charity, obviously for conservation as well. So hats off to you there, guys. I quite like the fact that you can do that. So if you want to do your bit whilst you're specking up your £70,000 Grenadier, that's how you can do it. Now the back of the car is quite interesting, I think, because what you've got here is a split tailgate that opens up 70%, 30%, okay? And at first you think, oh, that's quite a tight gap. It is, you know, it's quite tight just like getting out of there. But think about the practicalities, if you will. If you're towing, which you can do, because you can tow up to 3.5 tons with this thing, it's phenomenal. And you've got maybe a race shuttle on the back or a caravan. You can't open a big tailgate that way, and you won't be able to open one that way. So having the ability just to open that little side door and get in there, I think is great. You know, as I say, it is a bit tight, but the fact you have got that ability is quite handy. Now you'll notice that this one's got a ladder on it, okay, which is great for short people like me, especially if you've got a roof box or a roof tent. My roof box loads at the back, so that'd be excellent for me. That's standard on Trailmaster and Fieldmaster, but on standard utility you can have it as an option. You get obviously the rear mounted spare wheel, as you'd expect, which also has on this one a locking box. You can drop stuff in there, you know, I don't know, muddy pair of boots or something like that. You can pop them in there, which is handy. As I see, you've got a tow bar here, which is obviously an option. You can also have a jaw type tow bar as well, I think on the Quartermaster. You've also got a reversing camera, which is underneath here. Now at first you think that's a really odd place to put it, but it's actually a really clever place to put it, because if you are reversing up to a trailer, it gives you a clear view of the tow bar. So I know Land Rover have got this trailer assist thing going on. Just a simple camera there shows you where the tow bar is. Fantastic. And then of course underneath you've got your skid plate as well. I'm going to talk about off-road ability in a wee second, but you get skid plate there as well, and you get 2 really strong rear towing eyes as well, which, you know, feel like they just pull tree stumps out with those things. Of course you get your circular lamps, your LED lamps with all the sort of like the lamps that you need within just the one unit there, and a high level brake light at the top. This is a car that's designed for people that want to go up a mountain, not go to the golf club. And that's exactly the sort of like the brief that they set out with the Grenadier when they set out to design the updated version of what they think the Defender should be or could have been. And I think they've hit that brief really, really well. As I say, at first you do think it's just sort of like a Defender that somebody's put, sort of like their take on it. It's not, because I say when you look at G-Wagon and you look at Defender and you look at the Grenadier, they're all very, very similar looking. But you can do, you can have much more with the Grenadier in that sense, because you can have it as that double cab pickup. You can have it as a chassis cab. You can have it as a utility wagon. You can have it as a station wagon like this one is. So there's much more scope available with it. But in terms of its design, I think they've absolutely hit the nail on the head. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? I mean, I like it, but it doesn't really matter what I think. It matters more what you think. What do you think of the Ineos Grenadier? Do you think it's a rip-off of a Land Rover Defender? Do you see what I see? They've got their own style going on with it. Do you like it? Do you not? Have you got one? Are you thinking about buying one? Whatever it is, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Now, practicality-wise, well, it's ample, shall we say, 1,252 litres, since you're asking, which is more than you get from a Toyota Land Cruiser and a Land Rover Defender 110, the new one, okay? So it's more than that. But if you do need more than that, you can split fold the rear seats down. The rear bench goes in a 60-40 split, and that folds down, and that will almost double it to 2,035 litres. Now, I don't have my suitcases today because, let's be honest, you're going to get 4 suitcases in that, no matter what you do. So there's plenty of room in there. This is the bag I was telling you about for that safari top. So you can take the glass panels out and pop them in there. And of course, you've got things such as these tracks down here, which you can take out the locations of the tying eyes and sort of, put them in different places and pull them across. You've got more hooks at the side there, for, again, putting stuff across. You can buy a rear guard, like a dog guard style thing, stop things going in from the back as well. You can do that. You've got a nice, sort of like plastic, sort of like vinyl flooring as well to sort of, make sure everything stays nice and neat and everything's, stays clean. You've got power takeoff there as well. It's quite high, but then the car itself is quite high. So plenty of room there. But as I say, remember, there's plenty of other options that you can have with the car. You can put roof boxes on it, you can put roof tents on it, and of course there are other options in terms of, doing away with sort of, having a utility style wagon as well as a chassis cab and the Quartermaster pickup if you need even more practicality than that. Now, I've mentioned a lot of the options that you can have with the car, but I like this one. You get a fold-out table from the rear there. You can sit and do your work, your laptop out, or a barbecue. Actually, you could use that almost as a grill as well. Just get some coals going underneath it. No, don't do that. But that's quite handy, I think. Now, rear space. Plenty of room. And the seats are comfortable as well. The Recaro seats. And they are shaped for 3 across. There's no centre sort of like hump in that middle one. You can get 3 people across this. In fact, tomorrow I'm taking... well, myself and there's another 4 people going out as well, so I'll be interested to see how they feel with that. The only downside is the person that's in the middle has to sort of like negotiate the centre transmission tunnel, which does protrude quite a bit in here because obviously you've got vents there. There's also 2 there's a USB-C and a USB-A port in there, so at least it's got some connectivity. The only downside is there's not an awful lot of storage, and I find that a bit weird. There's no pockets on the backs of the front seats. There are door bins, they're quite far down, they're quite deep, but obviously there's no centre armrest, but there's no storage. I thought maybe they would have things like, I don't know, maybe overhead nets or stuff. If you're going to use it as a workhorse, maybe some places to store things would have been quite a good idea. Anyway, there isn't. That's one of the downsides. So I'm sitting behind myself. I'm 5'8", that's me, so plenty of knee room, and I can get my feet underneath the driver's seat as well and wiggle my toes around. You sit quite high in the back, so that's stadium style seating, because the battery and all sorts of the electric gubbins, they're normally, I think they were under the driver's seat and the Defender. In the Grenadier, they're underneath this seat, so that's why the seat doesn't, this squab doesn't actually fold forward. When you're sort of like, folding down the back seats, the rear back fold onto the squab. But that's the reason why, because all the electronics and battery and stuff is underneath there. The ISOFIX points are nice and easy to get to. They're exposed. They're nice and easy to get to. And I have to say, my daughter was in the car yesterday, And she really liked it, you know, sitting in the back. She said she felt really, you know, high up when we were off road with the car. You know, a friend of mine, Matt, was in the front, and you know, we were quite high up. And she said it feels great. She said, you know, there was plenty of space for her, and it was really comfortable back here. So yeah, so it's a practical car, definitely. There's no doubt about that. The interior is, well, chunky, I think is probably the word I would use to describe it. It's sort of part car, part tractor, part aircraft. And I mean that in a really good way, because there's a lot of switchgear that's really easy to, this is what I mean, it's so easy to use some of this stuff because it's actual physical switches. Now there is a screen, which I'm going to talk about in a wee second, okay? So first things first, you have a proper key, but look, it goes in the left-hand side of the steering wheel here. And there's a reason for that, because in certain marketplaces, obviously, where carjacking and things is still quite, you know, prominent, if you've got driving with the window down, people can't lean in and grab your key. That's why it's over there. Clever, isn't it? Right, so you'll notice there's no instrument binnacle. There's just a bank of warning lights, he said, through the steering wheel. You just get this bank of warning lights direct in front of you. There's no head-up display. Everything's over here. Let me just turn this fan speed down. Everything's over here in this sort of like display, but the nice thing is you don't really have to use this display, the touch screen as such, to just do some basic stuff, because there's all these switches here, okay? So let me just explain to you. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay, wired Android Auto. The only thing you sort of really need to go into here for, in terms of maybe sort of like using it, is turning off your adaptive driver assistance systems, your ADAS systems, you know, like speed limit warning and lane keep assist and things like that. They're quite a loud kind of binging noise that you get with them. But the thing about it is, you don't have to immediately go into that screen. It's got a sort of BMW style iDrive controller down here. Okay, it's not the easiest sort of like thing to navigate using this, but what's quite nice is, so that's set up in our favourites in this car. So if I go to favourites, it brings up the ADAS functions there. So there's the speed limit info, the overspeed warning. So you just do that, and that's it, and press favourite again, and it's back to the screen. That's it. That's all you need to do. But there's also things such as the off-road modes in here, which I have to admit I did use a lot yesterday off-roading with the car. And if I go into what's called the attitude mode here, this gives you this sort of gauge cluster here, where it will tell you your steering wheel angle, or your steering angle, so not steering wheel angle, steering angle, and then your sort of like pitch and roll inclinometers in there as well. So all of that's really good. I quite like all of that, and you can use that. That's excellent. Okay, so that's the sort of side of the screen that you probably would actually use, but obviously you can go through it to look at various different things as well. Sorry, somebody's car horn's going off. You know, so various things depending obviously in maybe different parts of the world, so tyre temperatures, things like that. There's also a really interesting thing on it called Pathfinder, which I found fascinating. So what it is this Pathfinder is, if you are off-roading in maybe some barren place, and it's very easy to get lost, you know, I don't know where you're going through maybe I don't know, a desert area, or, you know, sort of like just a bit of moorland or whatever, you know, and you think you get lost. What you can do is you can record your path through it, and the car will effectively lay a trail of breadcrumbs, okay? And then you can store it in here, or you can download it onto a USB stick. So for your return journey, it's already in there, or as I say, it's on a USB stick, which if you want to share it with other people going, oh, I did a really good green lane the other day, here's the route, or, you know, you're using a different car, you can download it into that. That I thought was really clever. I quite liked that. And then there's various other things there, such as your stats, you know, such as your altitude, longitude, you know, sort of like various stuff like that. Stuff you'd never actually really need, in fairness. So that's all in there. But as I say, normally you'll just get in, you'll turn off your ADAS systems, you'll pair your phone up, and you'll go into Apple CarPlay, okay, which you've got there. All right, that's it. And then over on this side here, you get your instrument cluster, I suppose. So you get your speed up there, you get your revs, there's a bar indicator there, you get sort of like a little warning thing there, like it's saying at the moment I don't have my seatbelt on, your gear indication there, and then it'll go between your temperature gauge and fuel gauge, and then there's a little button at the end of the stock there where that thing is there. You can go through trip meters there, so economy, range to go, stuff like that. So that's quite handy. So you can access all that information really without going into the screen itself. Okay, so that's what I quite like about that. And this is the whole point of it. The everyday stuff you need in a car is all here. and it's all buttons and switches. And the reason that they've been designed like this, apart from the fact it looks really cool, is that it can be used whilst you're wearing a pair of gloves. And this is key with this car. So if you are, I don't know, if you're a surveyor or you're an engineer and you're out in the middle of nowhere repairing I don't know, a pylon or some fences or whatever, and you've got your safety gloves on, all of this stuff can be used wearing a pair of gloves. It's just as simple as that. That's what it's there for. So your heated seat on this one, for instance, you know, the just big chunky button, your physical fan speed, your temperature control, your zone that it's going to, that's there. You know, window demist, full demist for front and rear. They're big buttons. The stop start, turn that off there. The audio, you know, proper audio control, you know, volume control, turning your park assist off. That's what all that is, okay? This, then you move up to this panel up here, which again just looks so cool. And then you've got the front section here, which is just interior lights, you know, that you get in any other car. But then this section here is to do with the off-road stuff, depending obviously on what you've got fitted to the car. Now this car is a Fieldmaster. Well, it's not really a Fieldmaster. It's a 1924 edition, which is to do with the Bell Staff Fieldmaster jacket. I'm more of a barber man myself, but there you go. And that gets this rough pack on it, which you can option up on the Fieldmaster anyway. The Trailmaster gets it as standard, okay, but you can option it onto a Fieldmaster. And that's got your front and rear diff locks there. Then I've got our off-road modes are here, so your off-road button and your wade button there. There's exterior lights there. You've got your hill descent control there and your ESC off there. Then you've got these further buttons here, or switches here. And what these are, remember I was showing you around the outside, you've got all this sort of like ancillary clamps and stuff. You can clamp stuff onto extra light bars and things like that. It's all pre-wired. That's where the switches are for them. So there you go there. That's what that is. Brilliant. And it looks cool, but it's all out the way. That's the thing. It's not in a screen. So it's, again, buttons that you can press when you've got gloves on, or, you know, sort of like rather than try to tap into a screen and find it's a physical button. But they've moved it out the way of your everyday stuff, and it's all up there. Just makes an awful lot of sense. And as I say, I just think it looks cool. And the fact all that's pre-wired is really helpful as well. As I say, if you're an engineer or something like that, you know, you go out fixing pylons or fences or whatever like that, and you need some lights, all that's there, all your power takeoffs, all up pre-wired up there. You also get the twin safari roofs, as they call them. Why is it called a safari roof, Brian? Because you can take these panels out, there's a boot in the back for them, so you can stand up and shoot big game from. I don't advocate that, do you know what I mean? But that's why they're called safari roofs. So you can take them out and stand up and look at big game, not shoot it. That's what these are. Brilliant. The other thing that was noticed the other day by my daughter, she said, there's no mirrors on the inside of it, Daddy. Why is there no mirrors on the sun visors? Well, because you don't need to check and see if your face is dirty when you're driving an Ineos Grenadier, because it will be. Nobody checks their makeup in an Ineos Grenadier. But there's no mirrors on the sun visors, but the nice big chunky size of them. There's no auto-dimming sort of like rear view mirror. It's a standard kind of mirror as well. Right, this here is a compass and not an inclinometer. It tells you the altitude that you're at. That's what it does, and that's the compass that's nice there. Then we move slightly further back here. You've got a normal standard handbrake. You can tell obviously it's got the BMW sort of like drivetrain because of the sort of like the pistol grip style automatic transmission lever that you've got there, and then obviously you can bring it back to drive and you can knock it across and you can manually change it as well, which can be quite handy if you're off-road. And then you've got this here, this secondary lever here, which is to activate your go from high to low range and also to lock your centre diff. So that's what that is, and it's a proper big mechanical thing there. Okay, then as I say, you've got this iDrive style controller, you know, which has got various things. You can go straight to audio, your off-road screen, your menus, your options, and you can just use it, you know, as a, like you can in the BMW, you know, you can just go through various different things. You know, you press your, where are we here, if we go to audio, he says, there you go, you know, and you can use it to go into various things, you see, and then scroll through it using the controller. There you go. Then you got two cup holders there, a big locking centre cubby box there with USB ports in it, and there's a little mat just in front there, which isn't quite big enough to take an iPhone. That's the only thing. You don't get wireless charging, you've got to plug everything in. And I am a little surprised at the lack of storage in the car. Yes, you've got this big box here, but it's a bit like I was saying in the back. I'm surprised that there isn't more things like map pockets, you know, and things for putting clipboards in and for, you know, notebooks or, you know, or devices. You know, if you use an iPad in your everyday job or a laptop or something, it'd be nice to have somewhere you could put that in. That would just be handy. It's a 2-spoke steering wheel. It's also at a weird angle at the moment because I've got the car off, which is quite nice for driving. You've got the centre marker there, which you do need when you're off-road as well. And we'll talk about that when we're driving it, although you do also get the steering, what steering angle you're at up on the screen, but it means you're looking at the screen, because that can get confusing because of this recirculating ball style steering wheel. But we'll talk at system, sorry, we'll talk about that when we're out driving it. Then you get things such as the cruise control and telephone over here. And then you've got the main horn in here, and you'll have seen this, the little red button where it's just a gentle toot. So if you're coming up to cyclists or stuff to let them know you're there, then you just toot that, and it's a very soft type of horn as well. Seemingly the designers wanted to have something that looked like it came from a Spitfire, so they got obsessed about a red button, and that's where they used it, was that little toot horn there, which is quite sweet. And then you obviously things in the door such as your lock and unlock and your mirror control, your window controls. Right. I just want to talk about the driving position for a minute, okay? I'll talk about the comfort of the car. The seats are excellent. They're Recaro seats. Now, obviously, there was a problem with Recaro a little while back, and it affected production of Grenadier. But obviously, they got rescued and are now back on track. The seats are really good. I mean, I did pretty much 6 hours on a motorway in this car the other day. And you know, across a couple of days. And not once did I feel a pain in the back. They've got just the right amount of support for when you're sort of like drive down A roads and B roads and things like that. But they're not too restrictive when you're off-road with the car as well. You also get this brilliant driving position where you can see the bonnet of the car. I mean, obviously, you sit quite high up in the car anyway, but you can, and that's the reason why it's styled the way it is, so you can see the extremities of the car as you're actually driving. You can see the corners of the bonnet and where the bonnet goes and the wings and stuff like that. The steering wheel is height and reach adjustable as well. However, there is a problem, and it's down in the footwell. Now, all the Grenadiers are automatics, so there's an accelerator pedal and a brake pedal. But on right-hand drive cars, you get this really massive big footrest here. And it's to do with the placement of the exhaust system that comes out of the engine. They routed it in such a way so that it wasn't low, so it gave the car exceptional ground clearance. The problem is, on a right-hand drive car, it puts this massive big footrest in it, and it's mounted really far back along the centre console. So your right leg is nicely stretched out in a right position, but my left leg is right up here. They're at different angles, and I tell you what, it started giving me a real pain in the hip the other day. You can't do anything about it. That's what it is. It's there. You know, you've got to find somewhere else to put your feet, but you put your left foot. But as I say, the downside is, it just comes too far back, and it's just not that comfortable. You've really got to, so if you're interested in one and you're going to be doing long journeys, you've got to take it for a long drive and see if you can get on with that. Because as I say, my hip started to really ache the other day. That's the only downside. So yeah, so just watch that, okay? Other than that, I really love the interior. It's all sort of like a plastic, obviously, but it's all sort of like really built well. There's no creaks in it. As I say, God, we put this car through some tests yesterday off the road, and there wasn't any creaks or anything from it. And it's all white, clean stuff. So no, it's not what you would call a premium sort of like materials that it's made from, but it's built really well. Does that make sense? And of course, you can just wipe it clean. There's also drain holes in the floor. You can take the carpet mats that are in this one out and hose the interior out, just like you could on the original Defender. So you know, there's a lot of thought into how the car is going to be used, and that's going to be key when we go through this review, when we're talking about it, as to how this car is aimed at a market, what market this car is aimed at, and how it's going to be used. But yeah, as I say, you might think, oh, that's a lot of plastic, there's no real leather and stuff. I mean, obviously in this car it's got the leather, but you know, the standard car has the cloth seats. But as I say, that's the only sort of like nod to premium luxury, is the fact it's got leather seats and a leather steering wheel. That's it. But as I say, in terms of how it's built and the practicality of it, you can wipe it all clean and everything can be hosed out and down. That's what's key with this car. And I've got to admire them for that, because they really have put a huge amount of thought into this. I love the way this is all grouped. I just thought it was for aesthetics that they'd done it, but actually when it was explained to me why they've done it like this, it all makes sense, and it really does. The fact that it just looked cool is a secondary thing. but it does work really, really well, and I really like it. The only two things that bother me about it is that, to say, a lack of storage and that footrest. Other than that, I'm a bit of a fan of this. Right, time to get technical and talk about some numbers. So hope you're listening. I've had to make a note of them, because there is quite a few numbers to talk about here. But in terms of the drivetrain of it, it is quite simple. You either have a 3 litre straight 6 petrol, or you have a 3 litre straight 6 turbo diesel. That's it. That's your choice. Both engines are supplied by BMW, and both send drive to all four wheels via a ZF supplied 8-speed automatic transmission. It has a manual override if you wish, like a lot of those transmissions do, but that's your only transmission choice on it. Centre locking diff is standard, but remember what I said, if you want a front and rear locking diff, if you're going for this car or a Fieldmaster, then you have to option up the rough pack. The Trailmaster gets that as standard. Oh, and that also comes with the BF Goodrich off-road tyres on that rough pack. Right, power. If you go for the petrol, it's 282 horsepower and 332 pounds-foot of torque, okay? If you go for the diesel, which I think you should, because I think that's the better engine, personally speaking, you drop down in power to 245 horsepower, but you up the torque to 406 pounds-foot, okay? So that's quite good. The only thing I didn't actually mention was in terms of its off-road ability, okay? So in terms of approach, departure and breakover angles, here's the big numbers coming for you. So your approach angle, you get 35.5 degrees approach angle at the front, okay? Then your breakover angle is 28.2 degrees, and your departure angle is 36.1 degrees, okay? The car also has the ability to wade up to 800 millimeters, which I think is just slightly shy of the new Defender, but that's got air suspension, bear in mind. This doesn't. This is on standard coil springs. So it's still decent, and trust me, the amount of off-roading I did with it yesterday, it was more than ample. Your ground clearance is also 264 millimeters, if that's important to you as well. Right, I'm going to break this down into a couple of different sections. This is going to be a long video, I'm afraid. You're going to have to deal with that. I know most of my videos are long. This is going to be a longer video because there's a lot to talk about with the way this car drives, okay? And we need to judge it, we need to evaluate it in its actual sort of like, on its primary reason for existing, with its sole focus for existence, which is off-road, okay, which I have been doing with the car. I've done about 600 miles in this car this week, and I've been all over, and I've done all sorts of driving with it. I've taken my daughter to school, we've driven through town in it, as I say, I've picked up some friends in it, I've driven it on motorway, I've been down some back roads in it, and I've been off-roading in it. I think the only thing I haven't done with it is tow it, and obviously gone through snow for obvious reasons. Right, let's get the numbers out of the way first. So this is the 3 litre turbo diesel that I've got, and this puts out 245 horsepower, so it does 0 to 60 in 9.9 seconds. If you're interested, knock a second off that for the petrol one. Okay, right, that's that out of the way. How does it drive? Well, oddly enough, the place that I thought it would be worst at with the motorway, I was pleasantly surprised how good it was. So I drove from Wiltshire to Staffordshire the other day and then back the following day. So it was about just under 3 hours up, just under 3 hours back. And I thought, oh, it's going to be noisy, it's going to be uncomfortable, it's going to wander all over the place with loads of wind noise. And it doesn't. It was a real shock to find out how good this car was on the motorway. Don't get me wrong, a Range Rover would be better, I've got no doubt about that. But I tell you what, it was quite a surprise. That BMW engine, when it's sort of, it sounds quite kind of gruff here in that sense, because obviously it's tuned differently for this type of car than it would be, say, a 3 Series, touring. But actually, once you get it up to speed, it settles down into just a very background, just sort of thrum. That's it. A Toyota Land Cruiser, that for me is that car's Achilles heel, is that engine in the Land Cruiser. If the Land Cruiser had this engine, what a car that would be. So in fairness to Ineos, their BMW supply is an absolute winner as far as I'm concerned, because that engine really settles down. And this 8-speed box is just really, really nice. I really do. I like the way this car drives up on the motorway. The worst part is probably round about town. It just feels a bit cumbersome, a little bit you know, just heavy, and as you would expect, you know, it's got a dire turning circle. I think it's over 13 metres, the turning circle on it. It's absolutely dire. I think that's something Ineos are looking to change with the car. Now, let me get on to the steering, because that seems to be most people's issue with this car. So what the car has is not a rack and pinion setup like most cars have. It has a recirculating ball system, okay? And there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is, for off-roading, that is better. Because what you don't get is the steering whip as the wheel tries to sort of like self-correct and then ends up whacking your thumbs and then, you know, getting all sort of mucked up. When you get it off-road and into the ruts like I was doing yesterday, the car stays where it's meant to be, and it's much easier. The downside is obviously, as you put lock on the road, like turning out of a junction or a roundabout, you've then got to take the lock off yourself as well, and it's quite slow and quite ponderous in that sense. So just bear that in mind. It does take a bit of getting used to it, but once you are used to it, I don't mind it so much. The only thing I would say is it does lack a little bit of feel. You know, and you know, even off-road yesterday, you've got this central marker on the steering wheel here, but there's so many locks from, you know, so many turns from lock to lock. Trying to get the wheel straight, and you're trying to remember what it is, you've then got to rely on the steering wheel angle instrument that's up here in the off-road mode to make sure you've got your wheels straight. That's the only downside with it. So it would be slightly better if it was quicker, but actually once you sort of get used to this rollerball system, it's not bad. Now the chassis, it's a separate ladder frame chassis as you would expect, a proper with a body on top. I'll tell you what the big surprise is how well it actually goes through some corners. You expect this thing to sort of like heave around like a tanker in a squall, and it doesn't. Because you've got that ladder frame chassis, because you've got two live beam axles at the bottom of the car, when you pitch it into a bend, it stays quite flat because all the weight's down below. Yes, you've got a big tall body on top, but the main weight of the car is underneath. So it keeps the car relatively flat as you go through the bends. I tell you, it's quite a surprise. As I say, the downside with the car is low speed roundabout town. That's where it sort of just falls apart a little bit. So as I say, if you're used to BMW X5, XC90s, things like that, this is a completely different style of car. Okay, so that's just the only thing. But as I say, once you get round that, once you get used to it, once you know where things are, how things work, this steering system, and you do get used to it, it all becomes quite second nature to you, and actually you go on. I've sort of purposefully not really driven or tried not to drive that many cars the week I've had this, so that I really got under the skin of the Grenadier. And I must admit, now at the end, or getting close to the end of a week with it, I'm on board with this. I really am. The other nice thing about this car as opposed to, let's say, the old Defender is the amount of space you've got as a driver. This is, apart from that bloody footrest where my leg is at such a weird angle, once you sort of get used to cocking your leg back a little bit, the amount of space around you, you know, your shoulder, and a Defender, the door is here. In the Grenadier, it's pushed right out, so you've actually got quite a nice amount of space, somewhere to rest your arm. That is a lot better as well. Now, I want to talk about off-roading now, because to be fair with you, on-road stuff, that's kind of dealt with. It is what it is. But off-road, bloody hell, what a car. What an absolute car. So I was invited down to Surrey 4x4 tours, which are down near Farnham in Surrey. And they took us out. There was myself and another guy, a Grenadier Quartermaster, from that he had at the time. And, you know, we were going round their little wooded section, you know, through some really tight trees and tight turns and proper sort of like proper cloggy stuff that, you know, you struggle to walk through, you know. And then we went green laning with the car, and I'll put some of that footage up now so you can see it. What a phenomenal car this is. So this car's been fitted with the rough pack. As standard, you get a centre locking diff, okay? But with the rough pack, which you get on, as I say, the Trailmaster, the Fieldmaster and the other cars, it's an option on, and that will give you a front locking diff and a rear locking diff as well. So you get those in the rough pack, okay? This is what I was talking about earlier. All your buttons are up here. So basically you pop the car into low range, okay? And then most of the time, if you put, sorry, I'm just going to throw a width restriction. I just need to concentrate on what I'm doing because I'm not taking this car down this road yet. So once you sort of like get the car into low range, you've got an off-road mode button up there, which sort of deactivates things like parking sensors, you know, cameras and stuff like that, you know, so things aren't going off all the time, and it sort of recalibrates a few things. Not the suspension, it doesn't have air suspension or anything like that. So that sort of like sets everything up ready for the off-road mode, okay? What you can then do, if you and most of the time then with the hill descent, so low range off-road mode on with hill descent mode engaged, the car will get you through 99.9% of what you would ever need it to do, okay? But if you do find that you're coming up a big incline on slippy grass or maybe some mud, or you know, and the things this can climb, it's like a mountain goat, this car. You can lock the diffs. Okay, so then you've got a front diff and a rear diff that you can lock. The downside is when you lock the front diff, the steering ability is obviously hampered quite a lot. You're really limited with the steering on the car because the lock is really narrowed down then. But my goodness me, what a machine this is off-road. It can wade up to 800 millimeters as well, so you've got good wading ability with the car. Admittedly, a new Defender is better, but it has air suspension, so it has a slightly deeper wading ability. Now I do want to talk about the suspension now on the car as well, because this is quite an important thing as well. The suspension will be different depending obviously on what you order, because if you order it with a winch, they put stiffer springs at the front because the winch is quite heavy that goes in the front bumper, and obviously the ability to pull with that winch, that will pull up to 5.5 tons, you need stronger springs, so that'll have slightly different suspension. It has got coil springs all round with eye-back dampers as well, okay, and a 5-link setup. So the suspension's not old leaf springs. They did look at it, they looked at leaf springs, they looked at all sorts of different things, and that is what they've come up with on that. And I have to say, the ride quality is pretty good in the day-to-day. I have driven cars with much worse ride quality than this, you know, considering the type of car that it is. So the ride quality is very good, and its off-road ability is absolutely off the chart. So the engineering, the depth of engineering that's gone into this thing is just phenomenal. The chief operating officer of Ineos is the guy who engineered the Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon, the modern day G-Wagon, and he worked at Magna, I think, you know, and that's the sort of the consultancy work that they've got involved in this, you know, with Magna and people like that, and the team that they've got behind it. They're all off-road people. They know how to build an off-roader, and that is the key difference with this car. This is built for people that think traction control is a good sturdy pair of walking boots. That's the type of car this is. If you view it as an SUV, you will not like it. If you view it as an off-roader that you can sort of like throw your kids and dogs in and go off for a weekend camping or drive it down to Cornwall and things like that, you'll love it. It's an off-roader first, it's a car second. View it that way around, and this car makes absolute sense. And not only does it make sense, it's absolutely bloody brilliant at what it's designed to do. End of story. Right, do my best Willarding impression now. If you know, you know. Let's talk about prices, okay? So you start with a 5-seat standard station wagon, and that comes in at $62,495, and then you climb to the Fieldmaster or the Trailmaster, which are both $69,995 before options. And interestingly enough, you can have those either a station wagon or quartermaster pickup. You know, irrespective of what body style you go for, it's the same price, which is quite interesting as well. And then obviously there's loads of options that you can add on to the car. Now this one's a bit of a strange one, because I say this is this 1924 edition to do with the jacket, the Belstaff jacket. So this is effectively a Fieldmaster with some options fitted to it as standard, if that makes sense. So it's got the rough pack, which gets it, as I say, the front and rear diffs. It gets 17-inch wheels rather than standard 18-inch wheels. It's got the fold-out picnic table thing in the boot as well. It's obviously got the leather Recaros. It's got various bits on it. So that this car here is £79,145. You can go higher than that. There's plenty of options you can add to it. You can go into things like, you know, roof tents, you know, extra lighting, you know, side guards, rock sliders, that type of thing. And, you know, you can really go to town on this. But the interesting thing is you really personalize it for your needs. That's the interesting thing with the Ineos Grenadier. You know, they've not just gone, oh, let's just do a load of options that people don't need. There's stuff that you need, and you just pick and choose the bits that you actually need. So whether it's, you know, sort of like leisure activities, whether it's for work or whatever, you know, that's what you can do, which I think is quite decent. But it wouldn't be unheard of to get a Grenadier up to north of £80,000 by the time you finished. Right. Naturally, you're going to see the competition for this as the Land Rover Defender, and rightly so in some respects. But bear in mind what I said about this car. It's an off-roader first and a car second. Maybe the new Defender has maybe gone with the balance slightly the other way. They've engineered it to be more car-like on-road with off-road ability. Just my thought, maybe you might feel differently, but that's how I see it. But it's natural you're going to see the Defender as a natural rival. Certainly, you can still use Defender as a workhorse, because obviously you get, you know, like 90 station wagons and things like that. So, you know, it's natural you'll make that comparison. The other car that is a rival for this as well is obviously Toyota Land Cruiser, and that's a car I've got a huge amount of affection for. I really love the big Toyota Land Cruiser, and of course you can now have that as a commercial as well. So they do that with the commercial. Although if you want a pickup version of the Toyota, then you have to go for obviously a Hilux. Now, interesting, I'm going to be reviewing the Hilux, the new Hilux, in a few weeks' time. So that'll be interesting if you're interested in that. So the Toyota Land Cruiser is also a natural rival for this. And that's really about it in some respects. The Jeep Wrangler? Maybe, yeah, and I'm a big fan of the Wrangler. You know, I'm a Jeep driver myself, and I do like the Wrangler. And of course, it's born out of a proper off-roader as well. But maybe it's a bit more lifestyle. I don't know. Is it a workhorse? You know, Jeep didn't bring the Gladiator pickup to the UK, which might have made sense. You know, as I say, maybe with the, you know, so the Quartermaster, that would have been more of a natural rival. But Jeep Wrangler, yeah, okay, I'll give you that one. Let's go for the Jeep Wrangler as being a rival. You're certainly not going to buy this instead of something like a BMW X5 or a Volvo XC90, however. That's my point. You know, this is very much sort of like an off-road car. Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon. Now, I don't think that's a rival, because in terms of where Mercedes have now positioned the G-Wagon, it's a much more luxury style of car with a price tag to match. So I don't think the person that's going to buy a G-Wagon is really going to consider a Grenadier, or vice versa. So yeah, you are quite limited when it comes to what you see as a natural competition for the Grenadier, depending on the reason why you're buying it. But that is the key message with this car. Whenever I review a car, I'm always in the mindset that I have to review it and deliver a verdict based upon the marketplace that it's designed to fit into, based upon the sort of target customer that the manufacturer would have had when they set out to bring the car out. There's no point in, for instance, in turning around sort of like saying, well, the Renault Clio is a load of rubbish because it won't do a sub 7 minute lap of the Nürburgring. Or there's no point in buying a Porsche 911 because it doesn't have rear doors and it's not as practical as the Range Rover Sport. You've got to judge these cars based on the person buying them and the marketplace that the manufacturer has actually designed it to fit into. And that's where, dare I suggest, if I'm being blunt, I think a lot of reviews of the Ineos Grenadier have slightly missed the point with this car. This is not an SUV. This is not a car that's designed to replace a BMW X5 or a Volvo XC90. Those are cars that have some off-road ability. This is an off-roader that can be as practical as an on-road car as well. That's the sort of way round you've got to look at this car. When Sir Jim Radcliffe and his team set out to define what the Ineos Grenadier was going to be, they sort of looked at it from the sense of where the Land Rover Defender, the old one, stopped, they carried on. In other words, how would a Defender be with a more refined engine? How would it be if it had more space inside the cabin? How would it be if it had a little bit more creature comforts? How would it be with a more modern interior if there was more space for the driver? How would it be if it had some electronics that would help rather than hinder its off-road ability? And that's what they've delivered with the Grenadier. And that, I think, is the important distinction to make. And also remember this, Ineos, whilst they were a big and very wealthy company as an automotive manufacturer, that you can't view them as anything other than a startup. So to have come up with a design brief and an engineering brief of a car and then get it to market in the time that they did and be as good as the Grenadier is can only be seen as a success story. And that's why I think, judged on all that criteria, the Grenadier is absolutely 100% brilliant, and I absolutely love it. Thank you for watching another road test review here on House of Cars. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to the House of Cars channel. And then when you've done that, make sure you've turned on your notifications, because that means you won't miss another episode when it's uploaded and it's gone live. And we're going to be doing an awful lot more on the channel, so you won't want to miss it. Have you got an Ineos Grenadier? Because I am aware of the fact that maybe it's not perfect. Okay, I'm not suggesting it is. Let me know your thoughts about your ownership experience in the comment section down below. Let's get a little community going here. People that might be interested in buying this car, tell me what you think about your car down below. Or if you're interested in buying one, if you have any questions, pop them down below. Let's see if we can answer them for you. Now remember as well, I'm on social media, so if you want to follow me there, I'd certainly appreciate it. I'm over on Instagram, and it's at House of Cars 1973. I'll also put up a little bit more about what I've been doing there, and also what the next review is going to be, so if you want to know that, it'll be on there. And remember, whether or not it is a slow car or a fast car, a big car or a small car, an old car or a new car, you'll find them all here in the House of Cars. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.